I'm going to raise this book up, and I guess if you're listening, you're not seeing it, but we're seeing it here. Dan's book is First to a Million. Who is the first to a million? And how many kids in their teens are really thinking about this?
It's not a lot, right? And so I'm trying to change that. I think my main goal would be to say, I think every young person, I think everybody, but my niche is what I call, like Gen Z, 15 to 25. I think they all should know that there are other options than the typical American dream pathway of 9 to 5 till you're 65, that grind. And so I'm just presenting them with more information and options and then letting them decide what they want to do. So, my book, First to a Million, the subtitle is A Teenager's Guide to Achieving Early Financial Independence. So it is for a very motivated, young person who is interested in their financial future enough to read a book, which is a small percentage, but in other ways, I try to incentivize and motivate young people to at least learn the information. And then if they put it into action now, great. If they put it into action 10 or 15, 20 years down the road, that's fine too. That seed will blossom when it's meant to. But at least now they have the information.
So again, I've gone through a lot of this book. I've got a bunch of sticky notes here. And my green highlighter, I've got the Can Money Buy Happiness. I think I have something at some point titled something similar to that, Can Money Buy Happiness. In my world, I call it the plateau effect, where essentially I see levels of happiness rise early on in financial accumulation, and then they essentially plateau out once we get to a certain point, an inflection point. What are the 5 things that you would give as a takeaway to our audience to tell their kids, or if you're 18 and listening, what are the 5 things to end up with getting to a million first?
Mm-hmm. Good question. And I can answer that one pretty simply. So I get asked quite often, what's the one most important thing you would want someone to take from your book? And so I'll start with that. Number 1, I would say the habit of paying yourself first is, I think, the most important thing that someone can take from my book, which in a nutshell is just, every dollar that comes into your life, a certain percentage of that automatically first goes into your future self. You're paying that bill to your future self. So savings and investing, that would be the first thing. And the remaining 4, I would just say, are what I call my 4 mechanisms for early financial independence that the book spends most of the time talking about. And those are: number 1, earn more; 2, spend less; 3, save the difference; and 4, invest your savings wisely. And so employing those 4 levers, mechanisms, combined with paying yourself first, you are, it's just math. You are guaranteed to get to financial independence well before 65.
So let's talk about earning more. How do you advocate earning more? Is it have multiple jobs? Is it start your own business? Is it go to Wall Street and go work for a hedge fund? Is it go into commercial real estate where your upside is, massive? When you say earn more, what do you mean by that?
So for the readers of the book and the members in my community being young, it's really about, in the summer, so let's say high school, college. Maybe they went to college, maybe they didn't. But in the summer, you at least have a full-time job. During school, you have a part-time job. And then beyond that, some kind of a side hustle, starting your own business, absolutely. Finding some other way to make income. It could even be just selling a few items that they own that they no longer use or value, like a guitar, for instance. I had a student recently who had a guitar for 10 years, loved it 10 years ago. They never touch it. And so sell that on Facebook Marketplace, get $50, whatever it might be, and put that towards your future self. That's kind of an extra income stream. I mean, to a point, you can't sell everything you have, but be creative with side hustles, entrepreneurship, even creating passive income at a young age is completely possible. So all of that combined, just figure out 1 or 2 ways to really maximize your income, even if you're young.
I'm interested to hear maybe just some examples. What have you seen in the last 5 years, 10 years of the kind of the teen and young adult economy, that if you're going to have a new business, what does it look like today? Whereas 20 years ago, what did I do? I had a painting business, outdoor painting, was, maybe a popular franchise type of thing 20 some years ago.
Yes. I mean, some of the tried and true side hustles are still very, very accurate. Like, I have people in my community that do lawn care, that do pet sitting, that do babysitting. One of my members, this was somewhat creative, but he built a few different yard games like cornhole and there's another, I forget the name of it, but he has a few different yard games that he's built. And he just, on, I think it's Facebook Marketplace, offers rentals. So someone rents some of these games from him for a birthday party or a reunion or something. He'll drive there, set everything up, come back afterwards, get everything and take it home, and makes a little money doing that. And all the way up to more modern examples. One of my members created an online course he had a side hustle, which was couch flipping, created an online course for young people or anyone, I guess.
Whoa. What's couch flipping?
Flipping.
What is couch flipping?
So it's a side hustle.
Sounds like cow tipping, but couch flipping. What is that?
Very, very different. Very different. So couch flipping is in a nutshell, finding couches for sale that are either very cheap or free. Oftentimes, sometimes people will say, if you come pick this couch up from me, you can have it. Here it is for free. So it generally requires like a pickup or some kind of a larger vehicle, which my member Ethan had. He had a pickup, so he would drive there, get the couch, take it home, steam clean it, maybe some minor repairs, freshen it up a little bit, list it on Facebook Marketplace and say, I have this great couch. I will deliver it to you, which is a huge thing, right? Most people don't have a means to pick up a couch. And, he makes $200, $300, sometimes up to $500 per couch flipping these. And he also had to convince his parents, because he's in high school, to allow him to take up garage space, because he at times would have 3 or 4 couches in the garage. So they weren't parking in the garage anymore. But he was making really good money, and it was going so well. Other members of the community started asking him about it, and he said, you know what, I should just create an online course. And he did, and I forget what platform it's on, but now he makes passive income. People buy his online couch flipping course for $75. I don't know what it is. And he's a senior in high school now.
That is awesome. I could see that as I'm surprised that private equity funds haven't bought that up. I mean, couch rehab is an amazing idea. It really is. I could see a huge arbitrage there.
Yeah, you can flip a lot of items. Couches is really nice because most people don't want to move them, don't want to lift them. And so they're willing to pay a premium for someone who is willing to do the grunt work.
Yeah, I can see. It's almost like if your dirty old couch in your house is kind of live through the grind of just, how much has been spilled on it or the grossness of it, but it's almost like you're giving the couch a second life, steam clean, new home. It goes from like, get it out of my house, like I'll pay you to get rid of it, to, oh, that's probably worth like $500. So that's pretty cool. That is creative. That's new. They didn't have, so that's something new that's something that we didn't have 20 years ago because of Facebook Marketplace, et cetera, as a really good example of that. But the tried and true still hold true.
And the online course part of it too wasn't around 20 years ago either. That extra revenue stream for him.
Yeah, which I guess is ultra passive, right? Because it's done. You do it once, and then you collect checks as many times as people, I guess, order it. So you've got pay yourself first. I love the thought of earning more. Now, spending less though is just plain tough, right? We're in huge inflation. You've got teenagers that are headed to college or somewhere, and expenses are high. It seems like on your list in the early goings, Dan, maybe the toughest one. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's toughest, but it's probably the one with the least bang for their buck, right? Because teenagers, they don't spend a lot of money as is. If they're living at home, eating at home, maybe parents are taking care of their cell phone bill, their health insurance, they don't have a lot of expenses. And so the book talks about frugality, and let's keep it there, right? Live that college lifestyle, if you will, of having roommates, eating inexpensive food, not going out, not buying new clothes. Keep that lifestyle for as long as you can. Avoid the lifestyle inflation. So let's say you graduate from high school, college, and you get your first full-time, legitimate job, perhaps a salary job. Don't go out and buy the brand new car. Don't go out and rent the nicest condo in the nicest neighborhood that you can afford. Stay living a frugal lifestyle, still spending on things you value, absolutely, but don't spend the money on things you don't value so that you can widen that savings gap, which then increases your saving and investing and gets you to financial independence faster.
This just goes back to kind of the current environment when it comes to real estate. You're, as a real estate professional, or a huge part of your overall financial plan, what do you think is going to happen over the next year as rates are a lot higher? You've got, I just recently have started to hear my real estate clients that have seen their volumes go from a lot to very little, not a lot of transactions. Mortgage rates are a lot higher. Do you think that is just part of the cycle? We give it a year or two before things kind of maybe correct a little bit in housing prices and they become more affordable. What's your gut on real estate market?
Yeah, I think overall it's hard to pin down because every market's a little different. But so I'll speak to what I know the best, the Denver metro market. I know that here there is a severe housing shortage, and I mean severe housing shortage. And when you get into affordable housing, it's even worse. There's just not enough supply, and a very high demand because people are actually moving to Denver faster than people are moving out. We're growing. And so just based on simple economics, supply and demand, real estate prices in the Denver metro area, generally speaking, are not going to go down. They may level out, or I think they'll slowly continue to increase, but I don't think they're going to go down. And again, every market's different, but I read a study a couple of years ago that puts a lot of things in perspective here that people are missing about the real estate market. And that is that over the last 30 to 40 years, the average time on the market for a property, we're talking about United States, all markets, all price levels, the average is 6 months. And I can remember a time very early in my life when if you put a house for sale and it sat for a year, it wasn't like
that crazy. Yeah.
It wasn't that crazy. It was not great, but it wasn't that crazy. So 6 months is the average. In the Denver metro area for a long time, several years, we've been hovering around that 1 month of inventory. The average house is on inventory for 1 month. And now it's starting to kind of fall back a little bit to like maybe 6 weeks. And people are freaking out like, wow, this is going from a buyer's market now to a seller's market. I'm like, no. We got a long way to go to get to the neutral zone, which is 6 months. It is still by far a seller's market in the Denver metro. And I think many of the other major areas around the country.
You know, it feels like it's tough to get kids to respond or pay attention when it comes to a topic like this, because it's long term. Like kids at an early age, kids see in the world that the media celebrates wealth, right? Forbes 400 list comes out. Not a day goes by where you don't hear 10 things about Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos because they're the richest guys, right, in the world, or richest people in the world. How do you practically engage teenagers? Like, what grabs them when it comes to trying to think longer term about money?
Yeah, it can be tough. You can't make a teenager do anything they don't want to do, and so you can't make them learn about their financial future. But you can present things in ways that make it more enticing. So, for example, that word retire, I never use that in my classroom. I never use that in my community. Instead, I'll say financial freedom or financial independence. That's something they can sink their teeth into a little bit more. That's something that isn't in their mind labeled as, oh, that's something I do when I'm old. Financial freedom is something I can get when I'm young or old. And I won't use even the words personal finance. I'll use, terms that make it like, for example, I had a personal finance club for a while, and the attendance wasn't that great. I changed the name to the Future Millionaires Club, and boom, we had lots of people, lots of students coming to the meetings. So it's just a lot of it's about phrasing, and a lot of it is math, just simple math.
No wonder you're teaching marketing.
Yes, yeah, that's my main gig.
You know how to do it. It's the same thing, but wait a minute, words work. They mean they're powerful.
Yeah.
You know, sign up for Boring Financial Personal Finance or Future Billionaires Club. I mean, I know where I'm going.
I just had this conversation today with the department chair in my school about next year, instead of having the personal finance class called personal finance, can we change the name to something more sexy that will get kids interested in the door? And so we're working on that.
What's your gut idea?
Yeah, something like Future Millionaires Club, but in a class title kind of way, or
Fire.
Money Matters.
You just use fire, right?
Yeah, they don't know what fire is though, except they know it. Hot fire, like a campfire, but they don't know fire. I mean, early financial independence could be the title of the class. Early financial freedom, even better. Yeah, something that's sexy, right? That gets kids to sign up for it.
I love it. All right, how about this? There's a TED Talk that you talk about in the book that helps, I guess, teenagers or kids think about their future purpose. Tell our listeners here on the Retire Sooner podcast about that.
Yeah, there's a TED Talk done by a guy. Lawrence was his name. You might have his last name there in front of you, but he did kind of and he was in high school himself, or at least he was very young. And he did a kind of a study where he asked a bunch of young kids, what do you see yourself doing, after high school or college? And then they, a lot of them gave him their answers and things like doctors, lawyers, engineers. Then he went back and asked them, if you could do anything after high school or college, what would you do? And a lot of them, their answers changed, which was a sign to Lawrence and I think everyone else that young people are being steered in a direction that maybe they don't want to go based on societal norms, parental influences, teacher influences, and maybe even fears around money. I want to do this, but it's not going to pay enough, so I'm going to go do this instead. Which I think is, generally speaking, is a bad thing. We want people to do what they're passionate about, what their heart is meant to do. And so finding a way for them to engage in that profession, career, vocation that is meaningful, is passionate for them, I think is a better way it would be better for everyone. Now, that might mean, one pathway might be to earn a high income with a college degree for 10 or 15 years and then reach financial freedom, thus allowing yourself to have the time to do that thing, which is your dream job or start some kind of business. And that can go a lot of different ways. But again, it goes back to just making sure that young people know that there isn't just one way to do this thing called life, work till you're 65 and then retire. There are other options.
So for our audience, this was Lawrence Lewars, Lewars. And the TED Talk is questions every teenager needs to be asked. So this is something as parents listening to the Retire Sooner podcast or reading your book, First to a Million, can encourage their kids to watch. And they start, and they're prompting them to say, hey, what do you think you should be doing in 15 years? Okay, now we'll remove all boundaries and societal norms. And what are you going to do in 15 years? And you get two really interesting answers if you think about it that way. What is your take, Dan, on college? Do you college is expensive. It's more expensive than it's ever been. We're getting very little relief around it. You've got this big political football around student loan forgiveness, but no matter which way you slice it, college is a huge financial decision. And what is your take on that? Do you feel like you tell all your kids they have to go to college or absolutely not? Or where do you come down on the debate?
It is an active debate, isn't it? And I think there's a slow pendulum swinging on this very emotional choice for a lot of families of whether someone should go to college or not. And in my book, I have 2 chapters dedicated to the college question and they were the toughest chapters to write. But basically, I boiled it down to this: I can't tell anyone what to do as far as, should they go to college or not. But in my book, I lay out the pros and cons of the choice of college based on someone who wants to reach early financial independence. And then I have a second chapter that says, so if you do then decide to go to college, here's the best way to do it. And number one on that list is, if you're going to get a college degree, you need to figure out a way to do it without incurring any student loan debt. That is goal number one. Number two then is, where are you going to go? How are you going to do it? Maybe community college first, maybe a 2-year degree or certificate, but avoid the college debt.
All right, so hold on. So if you're saying no college debt, Dan, then unless your parents are paying, okay, then that eliminates any let's say school you'll see on a Saturday morning in the fall. Like, you're not going to go to a big football school or a big state university or out of state university, because no kid can afford 25 to 40 grand a year, right?
Yeah, I mean, so if the parents can't afford it, many kids do get, a good amount of scholarships based on academics or athletics. So that could be part of the puzzle. And then also, there's so many ways to do post-secondary education that, you could still go to one of those big Saturday schools. If it's an in-state public university and you get some good scholarships, and you're also working part-time perhaps, or maybe you take a gap year and you work over the course of a year and save up $30,000-$40,000 and then just start college a year later, you're now kind of ahead of the ball.
Or perhaps you're breaking this up where your parents are contributing some. They're working, so they're saying, hey, we're going to help you with some of your tuition. You help with some of the tuition.
Yep.
And then maybe savings. And really, I see that in the real world that gets sliced up. Maybe it's a third savings, a third current working income, and from parents, a third from the student.
Exactly. And another option is, if there is a school within driving distance of that student's, where the parents live, then, be a commuter, live at home, eat at home, and avoid the room and board costs of college. Online school, I think after the pandemic, learning online has blown up, and there are a lot of different universities that offer 100% virtual degrees. And so you absolutely can live at home at that point. And perhaps your parents still pay some of your other bills as well. And so every situation is so unique, but that number one goal of graduating without student loan debt, I think, is so important.
How much should we talk to our kids about money? I don't know the answer to this question. I've been in the money business financial advisory business for over 2 decades. And sometimes I want to be really transparent with my kids, and it's almost goes back to their responsibility levels and how much they can handle having conversations. But what is your thought on the transparency we should be having with our kids and just talking about money?
Yeah, my thought is that we should be as open and transparent about money as possible, and we should talk about money as much as possible with our kids.
Okay.
So
would you tell your kids? Wait, do you have children?
I have one son, but he is 1-year-old.
So he's a little early to talk about a 401k. But let's say he's 10. Do you tell him what you make per year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, and this is an American mindset of money should be private. Money should be, it should be brushed under the table. We shouldn't be having money conversations with friends, colleagues, coworkers, or even strangers. And I completely disagree with that. If we all were much more open about money, we would all be so much more intelligent with our money, because every person in my circle, they know things about investing or saving or opportunities or the different things that I don't know. And if we're not having those conversations, how am I supposed to learn what I need to know? I mean, I can read books and stuff, but I would learn so much more if people were open with it. And so when my son is 10, I will be completely open with him. I don't know if it's 10 exactly, but when he's young, right, he will know all of the income and expenses for our small business that is our household. And, I will say to him probably, if you go to school, don't be, you don't need to be telling everyone this, because you don't want kids talking about how much my daddy makes versus yours. But once they get to an age where they're more responsible and mature, I would say high school age, then again, you're not going to go out and just blurt it out to somebody, but have money conversations. They're so important.
I love your take in this book on real assets versus false. I think that probably hits home with teenagers, real versus fake. I like that. Tell me the difference. What's an example of each category?
Yeah. So false assets, the definition would be an asset that takes money from your net worth or takes money out of your pocket. So a great example would be a car. A car is a false asset. On an accounting ledger sheet, it is listed as an asset because you could sell it for money, but every day that you own it, your net worth goes down because it has expenses, it has depreciation. That's a false asset.
Except for a brief blip during the pandemic.
Yes. Yeah. I think even we're still at the tail end of that blip where you could sell your used car possibly for more than you bought it for a few years ago. But that's not normal, right? So a real asset is one that puts money in your pocket that contributes to your net worth. And the best example I love is a real estate investment property. You have to own it, and it makes cash flow. It appreciates over time. You have mortgage pay down. You have tax benefits. So it is an asset that is building your wealth, not taking from it.
This is another thing that I really liked about your book is the difference between income versus wealth, which is chapter 13. I'm going to take my Post-it note to that. Income versus wealth. I really like. Can you maybe talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, this was, I think, extra important for young people, and my book is for teens, because in their social media world, what they see is a lot of wealth or a lot of income. People are buying nice cars and watches and clothes and vacations because, they have a high income perhaps. But what they're not seeing is actual wealth is much more difficult to see because wealth is something that we keep, where income is something that you spend. So income is just how much you make. Wealth is how much do you keep, right? What is our net worth and is it growing? And so knowing the difference and knowing which one is more important, you can build a very healthy, high level of net worth with a low income, and you can have an extremely high income and a negative net worth, perhaps even bankruptcy for some people with high incomes. So it's just about being smart with money.
How much does social media mess kids up? I mean, I think about when I see my kids and they're on TikTok or they're wherever they might be, it's so far from reality. And a lot of it does have to do with money. There's always some money component about YouTubers making money or contributing to somebody online. Does it make it harder for kids to get down to fundamentals in the real world because they're constantly advertised to online which is probably these, 0.1% type people that do happen to really make it online? How tough is that for teens today?
Yeah, I would say the jury's still out, but I would also say that I don't think it's as bad as maybe we adults once thought it was. I talk to high school kids every day. It's what I do all day, every day. And social media comes up often in our conversations. For today's teenagers, it's mostly Snapchat and TikTok, right? A few years ago, it was mostly Instagram. Before that, Twitter and Facebook. But it'll always keep changing. But I think what I'm finding from the teens I talk to anyway is that they are much more capable of deciphering those messages than perhaps we are even as adults, because it's all they've known. And they've only known this fake world of social media. Now, I'm not saying that every young person handles it in a good way, but I think many more than we thought are able to say, okay, I see this photo, I see this post, it's entertaining, but I know it's fake. And then I see this one over here, and this is more real, and they kind of know the difference. Now, unfortunately, there are some that haven't got to that point yet, but I don't think it's as bad as we maybe thought it was going to be a few years ago.
That's actually fascinating. So the kids are 18 today. They're digital natives. They've never known anything but an iPhone / smartphone / social media. So they're wise to it, maybe more than we had thought, which is a really, really interesting point. Do you teach this concept of the enough concept, the fulfillment curve? Do you talk about that in your classes? Which is this money, it kind of relates back to money and happiness, which is, I want to kind of wrap up on that really fun topic.
I absolutely do talk about it in my personal finance classes. And it goes back to what you said earlier in the show, Wes, about happiness kind of plateauing with a certain amount of income. It's the exact same thing. And by the way, the fulfillment curve I took from Your Money or Your Life by Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin. I renamed it the happiness curve because for my audience, that just made more sense. But yeah, it's the idea that, income can increase to a point and it's correlated with your happiness, but then it actually starts to, like you said, plateau or even go down the higher income that you make. And you really just need enough. I like to say actually enough plus a little, enough to meet your basic needs plus a little bit to have those splurges and spend on things you value lavishly, which we all deserve to do. But beyond that, more money actually, I think, I don't know, I don't know from a personal experience, but from a lot of what I see out there, high income can cause a lot more stress and a lot more worry than the extra income is adding value to your life.
That's interesting to think about. So it's not just diminishing marginal returns of happiness. To some extent, if you look at your fulfillment curve, you're seeing that really as income keeps going up, it can actually lead to more anxiety.
Yeah. My buddy bought a boat and a really nice boat. And he, like 3 or 4 years ago, he ended up selling it recently. He's like, it was too stressful to own a boat. I have to worry about storage and maintenance and insurance and theft and accidents and, and this not working and that not working and depreciating. And it's the license and the trailer. He's like, I just finally said, I'm enough with it. And it's an example of higher income can get you nicer toys, but then you have all these other things to deal with. Not saying you shouldn't have any toys, but there does come a point where adding more to your portfolio, I guess, is actually not adding any happiness.
So maybe we'll kind of end up on a more of a practical note, which is, what at what age do you tell your students, should they be getting credit cards? Should they be having bank accounts? Should they be starting retirement accounts? And I assume earlier is typically better, but what is that conversation like? What should parents be doing to get kids in shape financially? Yeah,
great question. Really, really good question. Credit cards, I tell my students and I tell members of my community, and this is going to seem a little scary, but I tell them the day you turn 18, that morning, roll out of bed, go to your laptop and apply for your first credit card. When you turn 19, get your second one. When you turn 19 and a half, get your third credit card, and use all three every single month, even if it's just for 10 or 20 bucks, because every time you make that on-time payment in full on time, you are building your credit history and thus your credit score. And I've seen young people build credit scores in the upper 700s in less than a year, just by having 1 or 2 credit cards. It is not that difficult.
No kidding. That quickly.
Yeah, so you
can get a 700 credit score by the time you're 19 if you're good.
Yeah, it's so
that's cool.
Surprising because they don't have the length of credit history, but when you have multiple entries, payments in your credit history, and they are 100% good, your credit score. Now, if they happen to miss one, right, it's going to ding it a lot more than it would an established creditor, but. Yeah. So credit cards, and this is all assuming that we've educated and trained this young individual to use them responsibly. Yeah. that should go without saying. So we don't want to put credit cards in the hands of an uneducated young person. That's going to be a disaster. Checking accounts and savings accounts, I think, the earlier the better. I mean, as a parent, if you are a parent, and most, I think, know this, you can go to the bank and open a joint account. They can't open an account unless they're 18, but as a parent, you can open a joint account with your son or daughter, even if they're 6, 7, 8 years old. And then, designate that as their account, only put their money into it, perhaps get the debit card with their name on it and let them use the debit card to start learning some of the habits around money if you feel they're ready. So I would say savings account and checking account both, even if they're under 18. Here's another trick. If your child is under 18, they cannot get a credit card, but as a parent, you can add a minor as an authorized user on your credit card account, which parents should do, assuming they have good credit and good money habits. Because if that minor is on the account, then the on-time payments for that account also go to the minor's credit history. So when they do turn 18, they're not starting from zero, they're starting from a healthy credit history position. So it actually helps build their score before they're 18.
And it actually has a fairly heavy weight, even if they're under 18, or is it formulaically maybe a little bit less than if they were 18?
I don't actually think you can check their credit score prior to being 18, but once they turn 18, you can check it. So it's just building their history. Like they have a history, but their scores don't actually, the bureaus, I don't think, calculate scores until someone's actually 18.
So, and then I guess the last one here would be retirement accounts. You guys talk about that in class even for teenagers?
Oh yeah, we definitely talk about it. I have a different pitch, if you will. When I talk to kids in my classroom, I'm dealing with the average bell curve of students in my classroom. When I deal with young people in my community, which is specifically for young people who are interested in this stuff, then that's a different audience. And so I have a different message for them around retirement accounts. But in general, for most people, putting money into retirement accounts and then investing it is a very good strategy. The comments change when if I have a young person who says, I want to reach financial freedom by age 40 or age 30 or perhaps younger, then a retirement account may not be the best place to put your money because you don't get to access it until you're 59 and a half, right? About 60 years old. And that's much later. And if an opportunity comes your way, like you want to start a business, that money's locked up. And so I don't tell them they should or shouldn't. I say, here are the pros and cons of both choices. You get to make your own choice. Maybe you still contribute to a retirement account, but maybe not as much.
So there's a lot we can do for our kids. We want to be talking to them. I'm getting that from you. And I would agree with you. And I think you have a good point, is that the conversations can get more involved the more mature they get, right? You don't want your kids running off and saying, my dad makes this. So as they get more mature, they can handle more. 2, I love all these ideas of just getting credit cards started early, age 18 or as a minor, getting joint accounts set up when you've got a kid that's 6, and then retirement accounts. Yes, again, if you're making any sort of income, you can put money in a retirement account, right? So we can put money into a Roth if we're 18 years old, making any amount of money. As long as we're making something, we can contribute. So, but you're right. There's some pros and cons to that. So I guess, I don't know. Let's see. I did get to kind of happiness. Let me go back to happiness for just a second, though. What role does happiness, though, with teens play in the money game, getting to $1 million? Do you correlate those two?
Yeah, the conversations around happiness tend to happen in the beginning of the class or course or in my book, because it's really about realizing, and this is so important, so critical to the overall goal or plans of a young person. If the goal is to be happy, or the happiest you can be, which I think for most people would make sense, then you need to first understand, what is it that makes you happy? And so I have my young people make their happiness list, which would be the 10 things. It could be things, people, events, hobbies, items. What are the 10 things in your life that bring you happiness in no particular order, right? So it could be walking my dog, spending time with my friends makes the list almost always, right? I like running. I like reading books. I like being on the beach, whatever it might be. And then once you realize, okay, these are the things that when I'm doing this, I'm really a happy person, then how do I now do more of these things? And generally the answer is, well, I have to find more time, because all of the things on that list generally take time. So getting the freedom of your time back allows you to do the things that make you more happy, thus you are happier. And so striving for early financial freedom, employing those strategies to get to a place where you don't have to work 9 to 5 anymore. You can, if that brings you happiness, but if not, you can go back to that happiness list and say, I love to golf, but instead of golfing once a month now, I'm going to golf once a week. And I would bet that person's going to be happier. So it's about getting your time back, knowing that that's going to allow you to do the things that make you more happy. And early financial independence strategies will get you to the point where you have your freedom of time.
Yeah, what a cool full circle. I love this perspective, because it's like when you're talking to a teen, you're trying to help them discover what makes them happy. It's all this list of all these things, but the common denominator is time. So it's really happiness equals time. But in order to get more time to do the happiness list, you have to have some sort of financial freedom / invest / passive income. So it's really happiness equals time equals investing.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing about that happiness list, I'll have my kids, the first thing I'll have them do is, circle anything that costs, anything that is free or low cost. And generally 7 to 10 of those items out of 10 will be circled, meaning that it doesn't cost me money to spend time with my friends. It doesn't cost me money to walk my dog. It doesn't cost me money to go for a run. It doesn't cost me money to read a book. Like the things that make us happy generally do not cost a ton of money. Some might. And so going back to, it is much more about the freedom of time than having a ton of money, a ton of net worth that, you only have so much time in the day to do the things that make you happy. Time is what is much more important than net worth.
A lesson for teens and adults alike.